Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Speaking Sessions podcast. I've got Adam McChesney here. Really excited to talk with him. He is a serial entrepreneur based out of St. Louis, Missouri. He was originally in medical device sales as a medical device sales rep, and he transitioned into entrepreneurship during COVID or right after the start of it in July 2020, which seems absolutely insane. But this guy left a job making over $200,000 a year, which you're like, what in the world? But guess what? This guy has done some incredible things where he's actually built a digital marketing agency that is making over seven figures a year now. He went all in on himself, which is really exciting to talk about. And we're going to get into that today, a little bit about his business, but a lot more so about personal branding because he is all about personal branding. And I believe that's a key part, a pivotal part of how he created this business was through that personal brand. And he helps a lot of other companies be able to grow. And actually, he is a member of the Inc. 5000 at number 868 and was awarded the Future 50 St. Louis, an award that actually is given to the fastest growing companies in the city. And he's had many obstacles along the way, just because we talked about how great his life has seemed. He's definitely had some obstacles along the way, including overcoming criticism and doubt from many for leaving corporate America, which, yeah, leaving at a $200,000 a year salary is like, what in the world are you doing? But clearly he's doing something good here and making that transition from sales rep to CEO to really help other businesses out and not just the company that he was working for. But Adam, man, so glad to have you here. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Man, Philip, I'm excited to be here. Appreciate you having me, and thanks for that introduction. So it's going to be a great episode. Appreciate that. Yeah, so you hit a lot of it. Adam McChesney, born and raised here in St. Louis, Missouri, lived here pretty much my entire life outside of college. Went to college about 2 hours or so away from here. So Missouri boy through and through. And yeah, man, my career after college has been a little bit of a roller coaster ride, if you want to say. So the past 10 years, coming up on 10-year anniversary of graduating college, crazy to think about. I got into sales essentially right after graduating. Never thought that I would want to actually get into that, but got into the medical device field. Played college soccer, and a lot of athletes that I knew went into sales of some sorts, but a lot of them went into medical device sales. So I
Mm.
thought, hey, if I can just get in the medical device sales field, I'll have it made. And so I got in, got super, super lucky, started with a small company here in St. Louis, and then started working about a year and a half later at the largest CPAP manufacturer in the entire world, which is ResMed, and had the opportunity to start in an entry-level role and work my way up, get a ton of amazing experience, travel the country, and make good money doing it. And so there was nothing necessarily wrong with the work environment or essentially what I was doing on a day-to-day basis, but I saw the writing on the wall for always being a cap in terms of what I was going to be able to make. And so it was an uncapped
Mm.
but capped commission. COVID happened, and there's all these sorts of back orders. We were also selling ventilators at the time, which, as everybody knows, was a hot commodity. And so there was
Mhm.
all these different things. But back in the end of 2019, I got married. And in 2018, I started taking digital marketing courses online. So I had actually started building out and doing projects and building up all these case studies back in 2018, kind of did that a little bit for essentially a year and a half before going full time, with the idea that when I did go full time, I was going to have a ton of things that I could show people to actually get them to want to do business with me. Because in digital marketing, everybody starts and they're like, hey, Philip, I want to charge you $10,000. And then I want to basically test your money and see what
Yeah.
works and what doesn't. So I had all of these different things ready to go. And then the pandemic happened, went from traveling the country to being cooped up at home. And man, I got to work. I doubled down on everything I was doing, and things started taking off. And man, it's been a wild, a little over 2 years since that happened.
Man, so you weren't just a single guy that was like 20 something years old. You were actually married. And so this is a big step Because I know for a lot of people, myself included, having that spouse makes it a lot more challenging to try and make that jump
Oh
because you
yeah.
have somebody else to worry about and take care of and everything. So man, that's incredible there. And I actually want to talk about one thing real quick before we get in that usually my standard first question I ask. You mentioned about building up case studies. So did that mean that you were like doing work for free essentially for basically 2 years? Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So I was building up. So I got into digital marketing through the idea of rank and rent. So it's doing everything that we do now, but I was owning all of the assets. And then I would essentially go
Mm,
to businesses and be like, hey, I already have calls coming in. I have leads coming in. Will you pay me for per lead basis, flat fee, commission deals, all that stuff. So it was much more of a hustle and grind. And what ended up
mm,
happening is businesses were like, hey, like this is great, but we would pay you even more money if you did this for our brand instead of me always owning the asset. But
mhm.
in that, I learned a lot of valuable lessons. That's actually where our auto glass company started. So I began that project in 2018. By 2020, we were on the first page of Google, like all over, and generating 500-600 phone calls a month. So I actually turned that into a business based like off of essentially a case study and project that I started back in 2018.
Man. That's awesome, man. Doing that, doing the work for free, essentially up front, but then you got paid for it, obviously. But really, just putting that faith and the work behind it to make it happen. That's man, that's incredible to hear because so many people feel like you said, you mentioned, oh, if I started a digital marketing agency, 10,000 a month. Come on, let's go. It's like, where's your case studies at? Where's the evidence that you're actually worth that? And yeah, I feel like there's so many people that are all of a sudden digital marketers and they want to charge this amount that actual experienced marketers have. And so there's definitely that nasty taste in a lot of people's mouths for digital marketers because I mean, that's you just put your name on social media saying you're a digital marketer and you're a digital marketer all of a sudden.
Yeah, no
So
barrier to entry. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
it's kind of insane when you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar with coaching as well. I think, especially the fitness space, you see a lot more of that where people, oh, I work out, I'm in decent shape, I'm going to be a fitness coach now. And they
Yeah.
really don't know anything. So it's definitely something difficult. But let's transition a little bit here. So my first question, and actually, I want to talk about your speaking engagement here in a minute that you just had today as of this recording. But before we get into that, first question I want to ask is, how did you get over that fear of public speaking?
So I think when I got into sales originally, I never thought I would have to do basically what is public speaking. So I would go and do all of these different seminars. I would speak in front of doctors. I would speak
Mhm.
in front of teams of people that could potentially be buying my product. And essentially it was public speaking, but in that format when I
Yeah.
was just selling. And so I think with repetition, it just came natural and I got better and better at doing it and crafting my message and also asking the right questions of what does the audience actually want to know and hear and what's most important to them. But when I went out and went into my own in terms of entrepreneurship and doing my own business, I didn't quote unquote speak, I would say, to a group more than 10 people until about a year ago.
Mm.
And so I feel like I've done probably 10 or so events this year, have probably close to that already lined up next year already because of all the momentum that I have. But it took about 5 events for me to get really, really comfortable. Like
Mm.
I even at the event I did today, like I felt like I was light years ahead of where I was a couple of months ago. But I think it comes with repetition, but I think it also comes with crafting a message that is so unique to the audience and understanding like what their true pain points or what they're looking to learn are. And I think oftentimes, and I used to be this way as well, I'm like, man, I have this incredible message on personal branding or digital marketing or whatever it might be. And I can't wait to tell it to the world. The problem is, if the world doesn't actually care about that, then you're really talking to no one. And so
Mm.
the more and more I started getting connected with the audience before, in terms of asking questions, talking to the event coordinators and being like, what is the purpose? What is the why? What is the burning thing in the audience's mind that they want to get out of this? And then I started crafting my message around that.
Man, so good. And I want you to actually dive into that. So I appreciate you mentioning that. And definitely repetition helps you so much to really kind of, and I feel like you don't actually get over that fear. You just kind of get comfortable with a certain level. And if
100%.
you or I were to go talk in front of Apex Live last year or this year when it happened and be like, oh my gosh, this is scary. There's so many people here. Or a 10X Growth Con be like, oh my gosh, there's so many people here. But it just where we're at right now, we're comfortable with that because we've gotten that repetition in and we know what we're going to speak about. But it's very interesting that you bring up that you talk to the event coordinator and everything about what's that burning desire within that audience. So, how does that conversation look like talking with them and how do you pull that out? Because some event coordinators, maybe they're great, they do know who their audience is and everything, but we might have some less experienced event coordinators or event hosts that they're kind of throwing an event together and they have an idea of possibly who they want to talk to, but they're not exactly sure. So, how are you pulling this information out so you can make sure your message is direct to that audience you're going to speak to?
Yeah, so I'll say in the beginning, I didn't do a good job of this, and I was reaching out to these people. Hey, I want to get on your stage. And I'm still doing that to a certain degree, but the last couple events, people have been reaching out to me and like, hey, Adam, I want you to come on our stage. We have this
Mm,
event. Here's our audience. And so it kind of sparks that conversation from the beginning because they're obviously reaching out to me. But even if I was the one reaching out to someone, I position it as what is the end goal of the entire event? Like,
mhm,
why are people going there? Why are people either paying money, taking time out of their schedule, away from their family, traveling potentially across the country? Like, what is the overarching goal and mission of the event? And even if
mhm,
someone is an event coordinator or they're just throwing this together, like they're going to have something to give you. Now, it might be very, very surface level and you have to dig even deeper. But if you can just get that little nugget of information, like for example, today it was the St. Louis Business Expo. And so there were a lot of business owners, there were a lot of sales reps, there were a variety of different types of people of all shapes and sizes, right? And
mhm,
he had heard about my talk from another event coordinator, and the last talk was becoming the authority, in your niche for personal branding. And I started talking to him and he's like, oh, man, I heard about, what you talked about. Like I heard good things. The event coordinator X, Y, and Z told me. And I just said, okay, awesome. Do you want me to give the same thing? And he's like, yeah, but, and this is kind of where it sparked about 6 months ago when we started having the conversation, but he's like, man, they really want leads. Like every
mm.
business owner wants leads.
Yeah.
So I crafted essentially the same presentation. I changed the name of it to how to create endless inbound leads for your business instead of the personal branding stuff. Cause I think the personal branding to some people, like it works in certain, like the title of that works in certain cases, but some
Mhm,
people are a little bit scared and pushed off by it. But if I start talking about leads, sales
mhm.
reps, business owners, everybody's eyes light up, right? So it was more so just that like initial conversation and discovery. Like, even if you're reaching out to someone about speaking on their stage, the more that you can actually dig in and uncover certain pain points, it will set everybody up for success. And in the beginning, I was just like, man, I just want to get on the stage and then tell everybody my message. Now
Yeah.
it's more so of a conversation about how can I provide the most value based on my experience? And how can I even just maybe change the title and craft certain messages that will resonate with what people are actually there for?
Mm. Man, that's great, and that makes a ton of sense. So, just curious, I know you said you changed the title, and obviously the speech changed some, but did the speech change completely, or was it fairly similar? I'm just trying to get a feel for how you're crafting the speech.
Absolutely. So it was fairly similar for the most
Mhm,
part. We did, I changed the way that I talked about
mhm,
whether it was personal branding or leads. So I tied it back into personal branding, but we were really talking about leads.
mhm,
Leads was what like a bunch of the other speakers were kind of talking about as well. I just was talking about it from the personal branding standpoint. So, yes and no, we kept it much of the same. But some of the
mhm,
things that I was actually talking about was like, hey, here are the leads that we're getting from exactly what I'm talking about right now and how I've been able to do it. Cause that's the other thing I think most people struggle with is they feel like they have to talk about stuff that maybe they're not 100% experts at, and you're never going to be an expert at. But if you start talking on theory, hey, I
Mm,
went to this conference and I saw any one of the big name speakers or even someone in our network, right, talk about X, Y, and Z, and it worked really well.
mm,
If deep down, if you don't believe in that and you're not 100% fired up and confident and you're not living that message that you're portraying to the audience, it's going to show. It's They're
yeah.
going to show in your confidence. It's going to show in the way that you talk, the way that you show up, all those different things. So kind of tying it back to the first thing is getting over that fear is find something that you're also super, super passionate about and that you're doing on the daily basis. Because just because you think it's mundane or maybe not as important, it's working for you, right? And
Yeah.
it's probably
Yeah.
not working for other people. So talk about what you know.
Yeah. Well, even like for you, you're talking about leads. I'm sure a lot of the stuff you're talking about there is very basic for you. You're like, okay, yeah, get on social media, start talking, or whatever exactly that looks like. But for you, really digging into leads, it's like, okay, here's how we're going to set up your Facebook ads. Here's how we're going to do this marketing strategy, all these other things, but they just need the basics. Like, hey,
Yeah.
post every single day, post twice a day, talk about what it is that you do, talk about yourself some, these basic things. And it's like, well, I'm mind blown. I can't believe this. This is so much great information.
Yeah.
But that's the mundane thing for you. It's the 101 thing for you. But for other people, it almost feels like advanced level.
Yeah,
But that's
absolutely.
yeah, the basics are everything. I mean, look at Michael Jordan, look at the greats in basketball and these other sports. They always practice the basics. They don't sit there and try and do some like 360 spin, 1 foot jump shot or something like that, something crazy. Free throw shots, yeah, free throw shots. Okay, we're gonna be at the 3 point line. We're gonna shoot, just right there, follow through everything. Just very basic stuff, and get that down. And then if you want to start throwing in some of the advanced stuff, you can. But I like that. And then you also talked about you really showed stories or things that you did. So you talked about the theory about how you build the leads with the personal branding in there, but showed, hey, here's what we do, and this is how it's helped us. So you can give them examples as well. So you're creating a story around that as well, so they can really understand and have that tangible example also. So really awesome that you craft all that stuff in there. So I know you know all about that right there. I know that's why you're doing that, and really cool to see that you're getting invited to other stages as well. So I appreciate you sharing that. But let's get into that personal branding side a little bit. This is what I love to talk about a lot as well. I know you have a more extensive knowledge on that, especially from a marketing perspective. I usually talk about it more from just a speaking perspective, like making sure you're getting videos out there and really branding yourself on that personal perspective. But what is your thoughts, and what does like personal branding mean to you exactly?
So I mean, it's literally everything for me at this point. All right. So I was in medical device sales, and it's a very in the sleep apnea CPAP space. It's a very, very competitive market, but it's not. It's
Mm,
competitive in terms of there's always new products and things like that, but there's essentially two companies that people can buy from or that want to buy from.
mm,
So for the majority of my sales career in the medical device space, I had to be better than one other company. And I was
mm.
really freaking good at positioning our product. We had a superior product, all those different things. So I go out on my own and I become a digital marketer full time. And there are hundreds of thousands of options that are
Yeah,
out there from
yeah.
all shapes and sizes, like freelancers, people in their basement that have never done it before, all the way up to, agencies like ourselves. So I quickly realized about a month into doing this that I had no idea what I was doing. Like I knew how to build websites. I knew how to rank them. I knew how to do the paid ads. Like I knew the technical aspect, but I didn't know how to market and promote and even what a personal brand really was. And so for a while, I had been following certain people that were in or that are still in the Apex community, which you and I are both part of.
Mhm.
And I quickly realized with a post that I saw from somebody talking about the community and what it could do a month into being a full-time entrepreneur is like, man, this is talking about a lot of the stuff that I really need because I have
Mhm.
no idea where to go. I'm used to basically putting my product up against one company. Now
Yeah.
it's an ocean and a world full of people, right? So
Mhm.
I started, building my machine, started getting heavily focused on personal branding. I think since August 2020, there might be 1 or 2 days when I had COVID, when I was super, super sick, where I didn't post on Facebook at least once a day. If not most days, most days it's been twice a day for the last 2+ years. And when I started to do all of that stuff, it obviously didn't happen overnight, but I took an approach from the beginning that I think has set me apart from other digital marketers that are out there and propelled me to where I'm at today. And that is not reinventing the wheel, but doing it in a different way. And what I mean by that, in everybody that I talk to sees this, is most digital marketers, when you go to their social media pages, especially Facebook, it is one big sales pitch. They almost guaranteed have a cover photo talking about one particular client they crushed it for, and how they can guarantee you 10 to 20 new clients or leads or whatever a month. And then you go and you see all of their posts, and it's just a sales pitch over and over and over again, or they're only talking about themselves. So when I started that personal branding journey, I said, hey, I'm going to have an amazing success story here of the growth of my company and the growth of me as an entrepreneur. I want to document this entire thing. And I want to talk about very little on the digital marketing side, 1 or 2 times a week, but I want to talk about what it's like to be an entrepreneur. I want to talk about the ups, the downs, the successes, the failures, my personal life. So, a little over 2 months ago, I decided to become sober. I've posted a couple times about that recently. Posts about just fitness and health, and like literally anything is on the table for me. And when I do talk about digital marketing, it's always either about my team or about my clients and a story behind it. So not just we blew this client's business up by 10x and they're off to the races. I always like to tell a story with my content, because on the end of that, I strategically have potential clients, people in my network, et cetera, that like to read this stuff. But I always want them to feel some sort of connection to what I'm posting, to be like, man, even though we work with a lot of contractors, and contracting is completely different from digital marketing, but they're like, man, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm going through that exact thing. So I want them to be able to connect and resonate and do all those things. So when people take a look at what I have on my content and everything that I talk about versus what they typically are used to, it opens up a completely new door for me to be in this other little subsection of a niche, to be like, Adam's not going to sell me anything that I don't actually need. And I'm not going to go to his profile or see him in my feed every day talking about like 1 or 2 client success stories and not about how he can actually help me.
Yeah, it's such a good thing. And that's so true. And I've seen it on your content, and really just building up that personal brand. And of course, you have to talk about what you do in some facet, because if you don't talk about it at all, nobody's really going to know what you do. But really just sharing your journey is a huge thing. And so many people undervalue that people actually can resonate with you there, because it's like, if you're talking about some of the struggles you have, a lot of people tend to think that people aren't going to believe in me. They're not going to want to work with me because I'm struggling with this stuff. Now, if you're struggling day in and day out, and it seems like 6 months have gone by and you still have the same exact struggle, they probably aren't going to want to work with you at that point, because clearly you're not making it past your struggle. But we all hit struggles. We're all humans. So if you're sharing that and then talk about how you overcame it next, you're able to educate people that way. And the more you educate people, the more likely people want to work with you. So that's awesome that you've been doing that. So what spurred that idea to have you really just decide to document it? I mean, I know you talked about a little bit just to separate yourself from digital marketers, but what made you decide to really just dive into, and it really sounds almost like 90% at the least is how much you share personal, since you said like 1 to 2 posts a week maybe are about your business. And then, so I'd say 95% of the time you're on the personal side with your branding. So what made you decide to do that, let's say percentage, and then really just dive into doing the personal branding and sharing your journey?
So I always wanted to be looked at as someone that was not just a digital marketer. So we have other businesses on the side, the auto glass company. I've also owned a landscape design company. I had come from a corporate background, And I have a lot of skill sets that just frankly, most digital marketers don't have. And so
Mm,
I didn't want to be cooped up always. I don't know what the future holds, right? So I don't know if I'm always going to be in digital marketing or if I'm going to have my team that essentially runs the company now take it where I can be an investor and a consultant and all those different things that I want to do. So I just don't want to be in the, hey, Adam is a digital marketer and that's the sandbox that I'm in. But I also do a lot of reflecting on what would I want to see if I were completely evergreen to digital marketing and I was an auto glass company owner, and what would I be looking for in a digital marketer? And that starts with the personal brand and the content and the core values and all this stuff. So I kind of reverse engineered what I would want to see and what I believe my ideal client audience wants to see as well. And that's another key thing that's really changed over this past year is we re-solidified our core values in January. We got our ideal client avatar down. And so I started dissecting all of this stuff and kind of auditing my messaging and just perfecting it and tweaking it and getting it better each and every single day. But a lot of it comes to, I want to connect with what I believe people are and what people are telling me they want to hear as if I were in their shoes. And I think that's a big differentiator because in the beginning, I was posting a lot of stuff that I thought people actually wanted to hear or might want to hear. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. There's oftentimes as business owners a big disconnect because of our ego, because what we think might be important to us is also important to our ideal client. And that couldn't be further from the truth.
mm. So how do you go about actually getting that information then? Because when you're starting out, you can go and ask, and I've done it myself where I'm like, hey, Q&A, ask me anything or whatever. And I get like nothing.
Yeah.
But then I see other people where they do the same thing and they've built a better following than me, clearly. Or maybe they just have a couple people that really just love them, or maybe they just make it up. Who knows? But it seems like they have a bunch of questions asked to them. So how do you go about figuring out what your audience wants to hear, if especially for those just starting out that don't have that audience built up yet?
Yeah. So obviously, as you're building up your audience and your client base, you're not going to have a lot to lean on in terms of, okay, hey, I know exactly pain points that come up. I know commonly asked questions and obstacles and objections and all those different things. But, ideally, if you're trying to grow your business, you're still having conversations each and every single day. So
Mm,
most of our stuff, I mean, we still do get questions that I produce content on when it comes to current clients, but we do so much investigating. And I use the term investigating because it really is that in the sales process in terms of making sure that if we're going to do business together, we're a right fit on both ends.
mm,
But we're taking the questions and the conversations that now my team is having in addition to what I'm having on a daily basis, and I'm creating content around it. So it's not necessarily me going and asking, hey, Philip, what questions do you have about digital marketing and what do you want to hear from me? But it's conversations that me and you are having and ideas or topics spark from that. You might ask a question here, not thinking that I'm going to produce content behind it, but I'm like, man, writing down notes or going back and looking at the Zoom and being like, hey, if only I answered that question, I bet 10 other people would love to know that answer as well. And then you
mm,
have that topic and then you create multiple layers of content from that. So I think it's just being attentive and
mm,
listening for key things in every single conversation that you're doing. When I started growing in my business, I was hopping on a ton of calls with people in communities like Apex and local events, and I was just having conversations. I wasn't even talking about digital marketing. And they're like, hey, I'm really struggling in this area of my business, or I'm struggling with this personally. And then I would just go and talk about it as well. So it doesn't have to be directly related or tied to your business at all. It could just be
mm.
conversations that you're having with really anybody.
Yeah. Man, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, obviously, like I said, you could go ask that question, but yeah, just having those conversations and actively listening to what they're saying. And if you're in that conversation, I would suggest trying to give some tips. Don't try and sell them or hey, man, I can really help you with that. Just actually give them that value because they're gonna realize, oh man, Adam's a great guy. If we just got off a call, we were just kind of catching up or chatting, whatever, getting to know each other, and all of a sudden, boom, he helped me all this digital marketing stuff that I was not expecting. And now you just created all this value in their mind. It's just like, okay, you did all this for free. First of all, I'm probably going to tell a friend about this. And secondly, what's going to happen when I actually pay Adam for this? So
Yeah.
the same thing for you. If you are trying to, you get on these calls to actively listen, make sure you actively listen, but then give that value as well to people and then actually go take that and then create a video out of it. Perfect way to go do that or create a podcast out of it, whatever platforms you have to be able to go share the information. So that's, man, that's awesome right there. But with building a personal brand, and this is what I talk about a lot, is building that personal brand is what's going to create that authority for you to then get you on stage. What are some takeaways, some action steps people can take today to help them get towards getting on stage to become an authority in their niche on social media?
So a lot of it goes back to repetition. I think the other thing is for the longest time, I just stuck to Facebook in terms of kind of
Mm,
my one outlet because it was working and I left behind LinkedIn. I didn't have an Instagram until about a year and a half ago. I got on TikTok way too late. I just started a podcast this year. I just started a YouTube channel and I was essentially a one trick pony. And so I think the biggest piece of advice that I can give to you is diversify where all of your content is going and also do it in the written format, whether that's writing your posts or getting published in different articles, publications online. The other day I just got verified on Facebook and we
yeah,
had to
congrats on
submit.
that.
Thanks, man. We
Yeah.
had to submit all of this different stuff over the course of the past couple of weeks. And, I've been working on this obviously for a while in
Mhm.
getting all of these different things. But I look back at it and I'm like, man, if I was only able to send them, hey, I'm trying to get verified on your platform and I just have Facebook and a couple of different, like they would have said, obviously, no, right? But I
Mhm.
have all these different lines in the water that help build up my authority. People spend different amounts of times on each of those platforms. So
Mm.
I'm connecting with people now on Instagram and TikTok. Like I'm people that I'm like, man, they never give me any love over on Facebook. It's probably because they're just not on the platform because on the other platforms, they're my biggest supporters. They're
Mm.
tagging me and they're doing all this stuff. So I think when you're trying to go build up your portfolio or your profile or whatever you want to call it when it comes to getting on more stages, the more lines in the water that you can have and the more consistent that you do all of this stuff, over and over again, it will set you up to be the authority and not just, hey, I did a search and I was able to find Adam on Facebook. It's great there, but it sounds like that's all he's doing because that just
Mm.
doesn't cater to everybody.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, people do spend time in other areas. And this is kind of probably a multifaceted question, but maybe let's focus on that beginner person, the person that's really trying to get into this personal branding. You talk about, okay, let's basically post on every platform. That sounds like so much. So are we posting basically the same thing on every platform, or are we trying to maybe recycle content, if you will? So maybe something I posted on Monday on Facebook, I'll post that on Tuesday or Wednesday on Instagram, or is it literally same post on every single social media platform?
So I would say it's about 50-50.
Okay.
So when it first started, it was essentially just copying and pasting and put it on a different platform, adding hashtags, trying to figure out that algorithm. Since then, we've recycled a lot. And then since then, our team has grown. So I have a
Hmm.
social media intern that plans out all of my content. And it was just planning out my content for LinkedIn and Instagram because those were some of the areas that I was really, really just not as consistent on because they're obviously a
Hmm.
different beast than Facebook. But now it's, hey, how do we write a message for Facebook versus writing a message for Instagram, LinkedIn, et cetera? So we're just scratching the surface there, which I'm really excited about. because I feel like Facebook I'm really, really solid on. And then those other
Mhm.
ones I'm like good, but I could be so much better. So I would say about 50-50, with the idea that we're going to be, eventually shifting to platform specific content.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's roughly where I'm at right now. Facebook's pretty dialed in. The other one's not so much. I'm there, but I'm pretty much copying and pasting everything
Oh
right
yeah.
now. And I
Yep.
definitely need to start working on getting it where it's more catered to those platforms as well, even if it is roughly the same thing. And I know it just gets to be so much, and you're trying to run a business, but you're also trying to post on social media, which almost feels like it's another business in itself and
Yeah.
everything. But man, I appreciate you sharing all this valuable information. I mean, it's so important to make sure you get your personal brand out there. Really, do kind of like Adam, start with that one platform and just really copy and paste everything else, though. Don't just be on that one platform and then eventually build up to where you're actually getting more platform specific, because they all want different things right now. But Adam, I want to ask you one last question here. And that question is, if you had one message to share for the rest of your life, what would that message be?
Man, that's a great question. So I would say be you. I
Mm,
think that, and this is actually, so I have an opportunity to speak on a pretty large stage next year. And I've already spoke to some of the audience. But this audience is going to be like 20 times the size of anything I've ever spoken on before. And I was like,
mm,
how do I kind of tie it together? And also the theme of the event is different than what I've spoken at in the past. So the idea is, and what I feel like the message should be is, there are so many different distractions that are out there in the world, from social media, from us comparing ourselves to you or to someone else, to looking at all of these influencers and celebrities and trying to replicate what they're doing. And in the process, we lose ourselves. And I'm
mm,
speaking from experience. I've tried to be other people as I've grown this company and as I've grown my brand, because I see where they're at. And I'm like, man, if I could just get there, life would be amazing. Well, we've grown really fast and I've surpassed some of those people that I've thought about. And I'm like, man, I feel unfulfilled because I kind of lost myself a little bit. And I didn't have that why and purpose behind why I wanted to get to where we're at. So I
mm.
would say be you. Don't change who you are because of what others are doing or because of what someone wants you to physically do, whether it's produce more content, figure out what you is, right? Like that's obviously the first thing, but don't deviate from who you are. So be you, stay true to yourself, especially when it comes to getting on stage and speaking a message. As I kind of talked about earlier, where people struggle and they tend to get very, very fearful and stressed and all these different things is because they're not speaking on something that they truly believe in. They're not
Mm.
who they say they are. And again, I've been there myself, so I'm speaking from experience. But now that I've kind of gotten into this zone of genius and understand what truly gets me fired up, what truly gets me excited. I mean, man, I've been up since 3:45 this morning. It's coming up on 6:30, and I'm not even, I mean, I'm tired a little bit, had some
Mhm.
caffeine as well, but man, this stuff excites me. Like getting on here, talking to you, speaking of that event earlier today, and everything in between, man. But it's because I'm being myself. And so
Mm.
that's the one thing that I would say would be firing me up for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I love it, and I really appreciate that. I excite you to be on this podcast to speak. I'm firing you up. That's kidding, but you're exactly
True,
right,
man.
man. Yeah, appreciate that. But no,
Mm,
when you speak on something that you're passionate about, it totally shows up. And I look at it this way: when people speak on a script, you can really tell when they're speaking on script. And that's why I always suggest to people, I mean, if you have a skeleton at the most, but don't have everything written out, because those people that, and there's people out there, and I get it. And if that's how you need to practice your speeches, by all means do that. but get it to where you can have just key points, skeleton, maybe some key bullet points that you have, but don't have it everything written out. Is you can tell when you're speaking off a script, even if you're passionate about it, versus when you're speaking from the heart. You're speaking from what's going on in your mind right now, what you feel like the audience needs to hear. And that message is so much more impactful than you spitting out the facts, spitting out this script that you have. And so I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, definitely be you. That's the biggest thing that you can do. And he talked about that definitely at the beginning as well. Like digital marketers, they're just trying to be the cookie cutter. They're trying to be what everybody else is being. They're just being a basic digital marketer. But if you're just you and you market yourself that way, whether you're a digital marketer or if you're a speaker, wherever you're at right now as a business owner, just be you. And that's what people are going to connect with. And that's literally what a personal brand is. And if you're not where you want to be at too, that's another thing, that you can create that new person, but it still needs to be you. Don't sit here and try to be something that you're not just because you don't like who you are. Like, you should still like yourself. So I know I went off on a
Yeah.
little tangent there,
No, love
but
it, man.
yeah, I love that for sure. But Adam, man, if people want to follow your journey, because clearly, you're on this huge trajectory, you're definitely not slowing down. You're sharing a lot of valuable information. Where's the best place or places for them to find you?
Yeah, so on social media, that'll be on Instagram. So my handle is Adam L. McChesney. So that's McChesney. And I respond to all my messages there. Just the easiest place to get a hold of me. But you can also go over to AdamMcChesney.com. That's going to have everything about our digital marketing agency, my podcast, YouTube channel, speaking events, and then all my social links as well.
Awesome. Well, Adam, appreciate you so much for coming on and sharing this value.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. It was a great time. I appreciate you.